Okay, so you can tell the camera who you are
And what
yeah,
else?
just who you are. First.
I'm Betty Davis,
And any introduction you
resident
want to
of
give.
Harlem all my life. I went to City College. I went to Fordham University.
Anything else that you want to say before?
I like working with young people.
So how would you explain, in your own words, what Columbia is doing in Manhattanville?
It's sort of like the movement of this country from east to west, manifest destiny. Columbia acts like it has a divine right to go from here all the way up to the borders of Manhattan, northern borders of Manhattan.
And do you think they're justified in any way, or?
Justified is certainly not the word I would use. I understand the university's importance to scholarship, uh, but I don't know that they're justified in just boldly taking over the whole territory without a whole lot of regard for the people who live here.
So you think it's more like how they're taking the land of more than just what they're actually trying to do to it?
I am more concerned about their taking land and buildings, and I'm not against progress, but they act like they're the only game in town. And they're not. There are businesses here, there are people who have lived here all of their lives, and I just don't know that they have the innate right to displace them.
Right. So how do you feel after them being shut down, slightly shut down, their ability to take any more buildings last December?
And I'm not quite sure how that happened. Is it
A court case.
Okay, it's a court case. Well, I think maybe there might be a couple of things against them in addition to the court case, and I'm glad that happened. But has the economy hurt them in their ability to spend as much as they wanted to for whatever?
Right.
Do they still have that capability?
Well, they own 61 out of the 67 buildings they need, and the project is already going to take a quarter of a century no matter what. So whether they make it slow or fast, they'll
they
probably
have
start.
61 buildings at this point of the 67.
Out of the 67.
And I don't know the total number here.
Yeah.
But could you tell me about what percentage that is of the territory between Columbia and, was it 168th? Is that their?
Well, what they're taking buildings from 125th Street to 134th, 135th Street, from Broadway to 12th Avenue.
They're taking those buildings. And see, I'd heard that there were some other buildings that they were taking as well.
There are different areas,
in
but
different
they're not.
areas
Yeah.
in Harlem as well as over to Central Harlem.
Yeah.
You know, that I understand also. Are most of those buildings currently occupied by the businesses, or?
There are some residential buildings.
Residential?
That includes like the gas stations and the auto lots and some of
those businesses.
Some abandoned buildings but also like McDonald's and tuck it away storage.
Yeah, okay, they're taking those too. I'll put it this way. My niece is affected by this.
Right.
Because she attends the Columbia Middle School. And it's my understanding when she went to that school last year, 2 years ago, that they were taking McDonald's. McDonald's was going to be torn down, and that's where their school was going to be put. And right now they're in a school that part of the building at least is occupied by students who live in the Grant houses.
Right.
And she and I had this discussion. You know, because there's her need and her classmates' needs. This Columbia school is a special school, but there are needs of those who can't get into that school.
Right. Yeah.
And how do you justify both, and I recognize the
Right.
need for both.
Yeah.
But to automatically say that, you know, the kids who attend Columbia School have almost a divine right over
Right. Yeah.
those who are not able to get into that school or go to
Right.
that school, I just think that's wrong.
Right, because they're also planning to open up a new high school in that development facility there.
Yeah, because the plan was to have the Columbia students go all the way through high school. That
Right.
is what they wanted. And there's probably some room here for modification of that program.
Right.
But I do have a problem with Columbia feeling that they just have a divine right
Right.
to the buildings, to what happens in this neighborhood.
Right. And so then, do you think after all the work is done and finished, if it does manage to be finished, do you think that the kind of area of Manhattanville will really no longer be like part of Harlem at all? It'll just kind of be like a separate kind of like just Columbia thing.
I would hope it would still be a part of Harlem, but I've got to say this. There are a lot of people who live over here in Manhattanville who don't like being connected to Harlem anyway.
Right.
You know, I've for the last 20 years I've heard that. And in fact, Harlem is changing.
Yeah.
You know, we have, I live in central Harlem, and there's, you know, serious concern about both the good and the bad of gentrification. You know, quite often people look at this being either all bad or all good.
Right.
And I'm glad we have a fair way
Yeah.
uptown.
Yeah.
You know, I'm glad the number 60 bus comes uptown to go over to the airport. I worked with someone who thought, why have that bus go up through Harlem? Those people don't go to the airport.
Right.
One of my customers said that when I was working. So there's some good and some bad.
Right.
If the general population can benefit from better schools, better supermarkets, and so forth, that's a good thing.
Right.
But the bad thing is when people are displaced without any concern for where they might
Right.
go or
Yeah.
be able to go. So, yeah, would it change? I think it would change even more to being separate from the rest of the city.
Right. And so, oh, I just lost my question. Yeah, I'm blanking. So then, why do you think that some of these big businesses just didn't sell out to Columbia, even when they offered them millions of dollars? Such as, like, the gas station.
Quite often people don't like to be pushed. It's either in Queens or Brooklyn. There's a Macy's, a new Macy's was built.
Right.
And there was one person who would not sell out. So Macy's just built around them.
Right.
And I admire people who can do that.
Right.
You know, but there are some who, you know, for financial reasons said they really couldn't stick it out. But
Yeah.
those that do, yeah, I admire them for that.
Uh-huh. Well, so thank you for speaking to me.
Oh, okay.
And any last words or something you want to say?
I am glad you're doing this.
Uh-huh.
I'm glad you're doing this. I'm glad you're in this program, Timmy, because if you leave it up to the paid media,
Right.
I just don't know that the other side of all of this would get told.
Right.
And I think, you know, you and the organization you're with will bring some balance to the reporting.
Uh-huh.
Hope your story gets out.
Well, thank you.